So this one of two screencasts is going to cover the material on how to publish your work, looking at peer-reviewed journals. So hopefully, by the end of this, you will be able to explain the process. So I'm trying to explain to you the process for getting work published in a peer-reviewed journal. My focus is going to be on the Journal of Human Nutrition and Dietetics because that is the journal of the BDA and that is the one that you're most likely to come across. However, there may be other journals that are relevant, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And what you'll find now is that the submission process is actually managed by companies. So Wiley Blackwell, for example, are the ones who manage the Journal of Human Nutrition and Dietetics. But so does the Health Promotion Journal of Australia, which I did a review for last week. So they are wide and they cover a lot of different journals with the same system. So hopefully this system will make sense to you whether you choose Journal of Human Nutrition and Dietetics or not. So let's start thinking about that step-by-step process. And the first one, before you start to write anything, is thinking about what journal is going to be best for the material that I have got. And we're going to look at the scope of Journal of Human Nutrition and Dietetics, but we need to be thinking not just about what subjects they're interested in, but the type of research. So does your work fit with what that journal is looking for? If it doesn't, your work will get rejected. And I just wanted to give you some examples of different material that's been published in different places. So one of my previous master's students, who's an HIV specialist dietitian, wrote a scoping review on recreational drugs, sexual behaviour and nutrition. Now, that would be slightly unusual for the Journal of Human Nutrition and Dietetics, and actually most people wouldn't find that relevant to their practice. So it went to HIV nursing because the information is relevant to HIV dietitians who are more likely to look at a journal than that, but also very relevant to HIV nurses. So that was the required audience, and that's where it sat most comfortably. Our communication skills survey was about BDA members. So it's UK dietitians. JHND is the BDA journal. Therefore, it made complete sense to submit it to there. And also, it is a subject that's relevant to all dietitians. And it is quite widely read. If you look at the impact factor for Journal of Human Nutrition and Dietetics, it's improved dramatically over recent years. Then we have another paper that's about healthcare professionals' attitudes and understanding of probiotics. And this again was a master's student doing the project. And through her work, she had links across Europe, worked some of the time in Europe. So it included pediatricians, it included some nurses. So it wasn't just relevant to dietitians. Therefore, clinical nutrition were a much broader professional audience. It made more sense to have it published there. And a long time ago now, I did a project on developing enteral feeding training for nurses and care assistants. This is community nurses and care assistants working in residential and care homes. So the British Journal of Community Nursing is a logical place for that to go. Much more relevant to the nurses than it was to dietitians as such. So you can see that there are different journals for different subjects, and that is what you've got to think about first. What's my subject? Who's going to get the most out of reading this? Where will I find that audience? So if we focus a little bit now on the Journal of Human Nutrition and Dietetics, there's a very wide list of aims and scope for the subject areas that are covered. So you've got to think the biggest audience is going to be dietitians. That's who the journal is aimed at, although others may look at it. And if you look at this list, it goes from clinical nutrition, public health, health promotion, obesity and weight management, food intake, determinants of nutritional status. So it comes on the kind of wider impacts of wider determinants of health, malnutrition, food insecurity, and what impacts on healthy and unhealthy eating behavior. So there's a huge amount that fits into the scope of the subjects that the Journal of Human Nutrition and Dietetics might be interested in. And something that I've kind of picked up as well is that they also show an interest in how these subjects are taught and educational related material as well. The other thing is not just about the subject, but the types of research that a particular journal will take. So if you look at JHND, then they may invite some people to write editorials. That's usually when someone has a great deal of experience and expertise in a particular area. They accept reviews and interesting, systematic reviews, yes, but also scoping reviews and narrative reviews that they might have invited someone to write. But the scoping reviews, there's a lot of scoping reviews in JHND. There are some journals that won't accept scoping reviews at all. And then there's a journal that's all scoping reviews. So it's quite variety, and it's worth checking, what type of work have I done and will it fit? They take original research projects, everything from randomized controlled trials, intervention, cohort, case control, cross-sectional studies, which includes things like surveys and service evaluations. They go back to basic science, and they also take qualitative research. And some journals will be focused on qualitative research, some will very much not accept qualitative. So JHND is quite wide. Sometimes you've got some interesting data, but it's not enough for a full paper. And it might be that you write a short report. So sometimes when we've reviewed things, you think, actually, this could be written much more succinctly as a short report rather than a full paper. And there may be professional guidance. So BDA guidelines tend to go into this journal. So there's a new guidance on something you're likely to find it there. So that's what they're aiming for quite wide research, but they've also, on the instructions for authors, tell you what they won't take, and that's really important. So make sure your work fits subject and type of research. The next thing to do is to go by the author guidance, because they give quite precise details on how to write your article, and it's amazing how many people do not follow that. But they're not suggestions. They are absolute requirements, and if you ignore them completely, your paper will get rejected. You not follow the guidance, forget it. There's often information to give you guidance on writing. So if writing is not your strength, there's often a lot of guidance to find as well. And they tell you very clearly on word limits, fonts, font sizes, margins, what sections are required, what words, how to acknowledge things, how to write ethics, what units you need to do. So, and they specify referencing styles. So, for example, they expect numbers in the text and then the references to be numbered at the end. So if you start putting author and date, you're going to be asked to change that. So make sure you look at it. They will have abstracts, but they also have visual abstracts, which actually are a pain. I'm trying to create some visual abstracts. They are really quite challenging. But I've just given you an example here. So it might be a table, a diagram, or something just to be more visual and to encourage people to look at that and perhaps get interested in your paper. So the next step is to write. Fairly obviously, you plan the story, and it might be that you can't tell your whole story. So you're thinking, right, what's the most important thing for me to convey? So have a plan. Work out where you're going with the story. What you've written for your dissertation will be too much. You're going to have to write fewer words. So are there things you can easily cut out? Are you going to be thinking in a more selective way? And if you also look at introductions in research papers these days, they're not going to include a literature review. They're going to be much more concise, to the point, clear background that's focused on what you've done. So look at what you've written, but you may need to start from scratch. Are you good at English? You should know that. And if you're not, get someone else to read it, because it makes it much more difficult to review if you are not writing in good English. And that makes it harder work for the reviewer. They're much more likely to pick out things that they're not happy with. Check the page limits, check the word limits, check your story. Is it following through? Like we've asked you to do with your dissertations, what your research questions, your methodology, your data analysis, is it following through? Have you actually come to logical conclusions at the end? When you've got feedback from your dissertation, you can change those things if they're not clear. Check your spelling, check your grammar. Have you explained all the acronyms? Always write them in full first. And are your references done in the way that they want them done? If they're not, you're going to have to do them again. So most journals now have a electronic submission. I've just given you a picture here so you can see that. You need a lot of information, so make sure you know what you're going to have, but get all your information ready. So you need details of the authors and where they can be contacted, place of work. You need to decide, if you've written it with someone, who is the corresponding author, whose email are they going to be getting in touch with, who they're going to use. You have to complete Strobe checklists and make sure that you've gone through that, and you can show them where to find the information that shows that you have reported your study appropriately. You're going to need to anonymize for most journals, not all, but most. So you need a title page that can be separated, and you need to make sure that you don't talk about the trust or the place of work specifically, or where ethical approval was obtained. But that's because the reviewer can very quickly work out whose work it is, and the whole idea is that they can't do that. So they're not going to be influenced by whether they know you or don't know you. And then you just sit back and you wait. Not as long as you used to have to wait. Usually it will be about a month, 3-4 weeks. Different journals have different time frames, but usually you don't have to wait anywhere near as long as you used to. So just chill and wait until it arrives.